Truly is a family's worst nightmare. In this case, 9-year-old Elizabeth Olten from Cole County has been missing since yesterday evening.
The sheriff says the search is focusing on a section of woods which police have narrowed by triangulating Elizabeth's cell phone location. However, the battery has now died. Also, the search is being hampered by an uneven terrain, high brush, and soaking weather.
Hundreds of people searching for your sister. Crazy. Unbelievable. That many people would come to look for somebody.
Just want my little sister at home safely. And
as I'm walking into the church, I get a call from Elizabeth's mother. And she's asking about her daughter, and I said, well, I've not seen her. I don't know anything about it.
Good morning, Alyssa. Could you state your full name for the record?
Alyssa Bustamante.
Who was this person that could have possibly abducted this girl? Was other children in the neighborhood, were they at risk? Did we have a predator on the loose in this small little town America?
Alyssa Bustamante.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Okay.
A girl from Jefferson City area will be tried as an adult on first-degree murder charges. Alyssa Bustamante
She dug it on Friday. Elizabeth was killed on Wednesday. This wasn't a snap. It was a setup.
You didn't have a shovel.
I don't know.
You didn't dig that hole with a knife. You did not. I was out there for 5 hours. You didn't dig that hole with a knife.
I dug it Friday.
She strangled a 9-year-old girl. She slit her throat. She stabbed her until she stopped moving. And then she went home, picked up her diary, and wrote about how amazing it felt before heading off to church like nothing had happened. She was just 15 years old. And what police would uncover in her bedroom would prove this wasn't a moment of madness. It was something she had been waiting weeks to do. Martins, Missouri, a sleepy town of barely 1,000 people, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and kids ride their bikes until the street lights come on. This is where 9-year-old Elizabeth Olten lived with her mother, Patty Price, and her 2 older siblings. Elizabeth was the baby of the family, a bright, theatrical little girl who had just landed a role in the school play. She'd run her lines with anyone who would listen, belt out Hannah Montana and Taylor Swift songs into a hairbrush, and beg her brother and sister to act out scenes with her. Sweet, kind, a little shy of the dark, the kind of child who always came home when she was told to. On October 21st, 2009, a Wednesday evening, dinner was on the stove when there was a knock at the door. It was Elizabeth's friend Emma, asking if she could come out and play. Patty said no at first. It was a school night, but the girls begged, jumping up and down, pleading. Emma lived just 4 houses down, so Patty gave in, with one rule: home by 6, 1 hour. 6 o'clock came, then 6:15, no Elizabeth. The sun was dropping fast, and Elizabeth was terrified of the dark. She'd never stay out by choice. Patty called her cell, straight to voicemail. So she called Emma's grandmother, Karen, the woman raising Emma and her siblings, and that's when her stomach dropped. Karen hadn't seen Elizabeth all afternoon. She didn't even know Emma had knocked on Patty's door. Patty hung up and dialed 911. By 6:30, officers were swarming the neighborhood, and there was a problem, a big one. Right behind their houses sat 60 acres of thick, tangled woodland. If a 9-year-old got lost in there in the dark, finding her would be nearly impossible. Police questioned Emma. She said the 2 of them had wandered through the woods and the neighbors' yards, and that an hour later, Elizabeth had set off home, just like her mom told her. Emma watched her walk away. That, she said, was the last she saw of her. But Patty wasn't buying the lost in the woods theory for a second. She's 9 years old. She wouldn't just walk off by herself. Within hours, nearly a third of the town was out searching. They worked until the darkness made it impossible, then started again at sunrise. By the next afternoon, the FBI had joined in.
Truly is a family's worst nightmare. In this case, 9-year-old Elizabeth Olten from Cole County has been missing since yesterday evening. Good evening. I'm Angie Bailey.
And I'm Ryan Takeo in for Jim. Cole County authorities and volunteers have been searching for Elizabeth all day. KOMU8's Brooke Hash is at the scene. Brooke, is there anything new?
Ryan, I can tell you that the number of volunteers and law enforcement across the state have tripled since last night to more than 300 people. They are covering a half-square-mile grid search near Elizabeth Olten's home that is just behind me. She went missing last night around 6 p.m. on her way home from a friend's house just 4 blocks away. The search has not ended since then. There's no decision if or when it will end, and no Amber Alert has been issued.
Registered sex offenders were interviewed. Every car coming in and out of town was stopped. Helicopters circled. Dive teams hit the ponds. Sniffer dogs combed the brush. And then, after a break, Elizabeth's cell phone was still pinging somewhere in those woods. But by the time searchers closed in on the signal, the battery died. The pings stopped. The trail went cold.
The sheriff says the search is focusing on a section of woods which police have narrowed by triangulating Elizabeth's cell phone location. However, the battery has now died. Also, the search is being hampered by an uneven terrain, high brush, and soaking weather.
I just want my little sister home safely and...
Right now, she's listed as an endangered missing person.
Then investigators pulled Elizabeth's call records. Most of the contacts checked out. Her mom, friends, family. But one name stood out. That afternoon, she'd gotten a call from someone named Alyssa. And right around the same time, 6-year-old Emma quietly asked to speak with the detectives again. She had something to tell them, and she looked scared. It wasn't her idea to knock on Elizabeth's door that day. Her older half-sister had told her to do it. Her 15-year-old half-sister, Alyssa Bustamante. Emma said while the girls were playing outside, Alyssa came out and joined them, then told Emma to get lost. Right at that moment, the phone call to Elizabeth came through. From Alyssa, Emma walked back to her own yard alone, leaving Elizabeth and Alyssa together. A while later, Emma fell in the garden and scratched herself on some thorns. She screamed for help. Alyssa came running from her bedroom, and as Alyssa was helping her up, Emma noticed something on her clothes, something that looked a lot like blood. Detectives questioned Alyssa. She was calm, open, helpful even, but something about Emma's story didn't sit right, because if Emma was telling the truth, the last person to see Elizabeth alive wasn't her mother, or a stranger, or someone in those woods. It was the teenage girl living 4 houses down. 48 hours in, and reality was sinking in. Elizabeth hadn't wandered off. Someone took her, or led her somewhere she'd never come back from. Then volunteers searching the woods stumbled onto something strange. A massive hole, freshly dug, then filled back in. They called the police immediately, but when officers dug it up, there was nothing inside, empty. And here's the thing, detectives had already seen holes just like it in Alyssa Bustamante's backyard. A search warrant was issued. They tore through the house. Everything looked normal until they opened the door to Alyssa's bedroom. The walls were covered in writing. Some of it was scrawled in blood. There was a sketch of a human outline with the name Emma written next to it, her own 6-year-old sister. Cards from her father, who was in prison, were tossed around the room, and buried under the chaos, they found it, her diary. One entry read, "If I don't talk about it, I bottle it up, and when I explode, someone's going to die." Then they spotted something else, a paragraph scribbled out in heavy blue ink. Whoever wrote it didn't want it read, so investigators held it up to the light from behind, and 2 words bled through the page, slit and throat. And then came the next discovery. Alyssa had told everyone she was at school that day. She wasn't. She'd skipped, and no one could account for where she was during the exact window Elizabeth vanished. The diary was rushed to the FBI and handed over to Sergeant David Rice. He was about to sit down across from a 15-year-old girl, and he had a feeling he was about to meet something he'd never forget. But first, who was Alyssa Bustamante? Born in 1994, her life had been chaotic from the start. Both parents were addicts. Her father was in and out of prison. Her mother would disappear for days on drug binges. Eventually, she and her siblings landed with their grandparents, Karen and Gary, who took full custody and tried desperately to give them a normal childhood. But by her teens, Alyssa was unraveling. She was self-harming, carving words into her own arms. She overdosed and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Doctors diagnosed her with severe depression and described her as violent and angry. She was put on antidepressants and sent home. Things got darker. On social media, she listed her hobbies as killing people and cutting. She told friends and even her boyfriend that she wanted to know what it felt like to take a life. She fantasized about burning down a house with a family trapped inside. One of her posts read, "Bad decisions make great stories."
She also posted a video to her YouTube channel called "Idiots Getting Electrocuted by Electric Fence." The video showed her trying to get her 2 brothers to touch a fence that she knew would electrocute them. A disturbing pattern of behaviour was clear to see, and the more the FBI looked into her background, The more they found pointed towards her being a dangerous individual.
She'd even uploaded a video to YouTube called "Idiots Getting Electrocuted by Electric Fence," footage of her tricking her own little brothers into grabbing a live electric wire. The deeper the FBI dug into her life, the clearer it became. This wasn't a troubled teen. This was someone who wanted to hurt people, and she'd been broadcasting it for everyone to see. Sergeant Rice brought Alyssa in for a formal interview with her grandmother and a juvenile officer in the room. His strategy was simple: ask a question, then say nothing. Let the silence stretch, sometimes for a full minute. Most people can't sit in that kind of silence. They start talking just to fill it. Alyssa walked him through her day. She said she got home from school around 3:30, hung out for an hour, then went for a walk in the woods alone around 4:30 or 5, came back, was in her room, heard Emma screaming, came out to help. Rice already knew she was lying. She'd never been at school that day at all. He pulled out a map and asked her to trace her route.
Did you want to draw this for you?
I have a map.
Oh.
Now, the thing about this map, I don't think it has where your actual house is. So the way I understand the new house would be right back here. Is that right? Okay, let's say the new house is ballpark here.
I'm not exactly sure how far back it goes. It's like past all the clearings, and then when it starts to get to like a smaller trail.
Her timeline was full of holes, a walk that was supposedly only 15 or 20 minutes long, but somehow swallowed up an entire hour. Then Rice pivoted. He brought up the strange pits scattered across her property, and without flinching, Alyssa admitted she dug them herself. She just liked digging holes, she said. Sometimes she buried dead animals in them.
Well, you know, there were some folks out there out in the forest, I guess, digging some holes or looking at some holes. And I guess they had said that you like to go out there and dig holes. So I'm going to have to ask you some stuff about yourself. Tell me about these holes you dig.
Well,
You dig them a certain way? Just wherever they're at? I mean, do you dig at a certain spot or what?
Well,
and you can understand why, as if people were out in the woods looking for a person, if they were lost, or God forbid, looking for, if they thought it was God forbid, a body. Have you dug a hole like this before then, or is this the first time?
It's not completely like this, but it's like kind of like that.
Okay.
Like
so
big enough for a shoebox.
Okay, but this is the first time of that size.
Yes.
Okay.
But what about the big round ones that I kept falling in? And I mean, they're deep. And I was getting telling me, did you guys quit doing this? Because they're dangerous. And we used to ride our horses up there, and I could break a leg. I mean, they're huge.
Okay.
There's like 3 or 4 of them.
Then Rice asked her quietly, "What kind of person do you think would do this to a 9-year-old girl?" Alyssa shrugged. "I don't know, a sick person, someone that can put down all their morals." She kept insisting she'd never been alone with Elizabeth, that she'd been helping search for her, that she was just as horrified as everyone else.
What do you know about this whole investigation or mess?
She's still missing. They're out looking for her. They don't want more volunteers. This is really big. They've had helicopters searching as well. And I don't know, that's pretty much what I know. I really don't think she would run away because she's 9. I think that maybe someone kidnapped her or something. It's a terrible thing. I don't know what else to assume.
Is there anybody in that area you can think of that comes to mind that you would think of that would do that? Is there anybody that, knowing your neighbors, that you would?
No.
Rice circled back. He told her the phone data didn't lie. Elizabeth's last signal was pinging from somewhere right behind Alyssa's own house. Then he steered the conversation into her bedroom and to that diary.
Now, it's my understanding that did the FBI do a search or something of the house where you guys lived?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. What was that all about? You said they searched your room.
Yes.
Other marijuana seeds and that sort of stuff. Did they find anything?
Nope.
Okay. Did they take anything?
They took my sheet and the pillowcase, I think.
Did they take anything else?
I don't think so. I haven't really surveyed anything.
Okay.
I think they took clothes.
So they took a pair of pants.
And a diary. I mean, they gave us the list. It's not all coming to me what was on the list, but there's a long list.
Your diary. Okay. You ever gone through the diary?
I've looked at some of it, yes.
Okay. Did you know that?
No.
Does it make you angry?
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's kind of your private, personal thoughts, isn't it?
And then he dropped it on her. The thing she thought she'd hidden. The thing she thought no one would ever read.
We talked a little bit earlier about technology.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you write something down and then you take a pen and try real hard to scratch it out, that doesn't make it go away.
Okay.
It's still there. What we want to do is find out what happened to the little girl. I need to know what the truth is.
Okay.
We have your diary. We've read your diary, including the last entry.
Mm-hmm.
Where's she at?
I don't know.
You need to tell us the truth. You need to tell us what happened. If this was an accident, that's fine. We can deal with that. This family needs closure. Okay? Let's start at the beginning. Is this something that was planned out, or was this just an accident?
We're just mentioning around. Juvenile. She died. I didn't know what to do. So I burned her body.
Who helped you?
Nobody.
We're out in the forest.
Alyssa spun a story. They'd been playing in the forest. Elizabeth tripped, hit her head, died instantly. Panicked, she burned the body. An accident, a tragic accident. But Rice already knew that was a lie, because the words she'd tried to scratch out in her diary had been recovered, every single one. And they read, "I just effing killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead. I don't know how to feel at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the, oh my God, I can't do this feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kind of nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now, LOL. She wrote that the same day Elizabeth disappeared. Then she went to church. Rice told her the truth was coming either way. Her body would be found. An autopsy would tell them everything, so she might as well say it now.
And is it true you said then you burned her body? Okay, is that part true?
Mm-hmm.
So is her body should still be there?
I burned it and then scattered it and all over the creek.
Into the creek?
Yes.
Is the creek full of water?
Yes.
And finally, the full picture came out. Alyssa had run into Elizabeth and Emma outside. As soon as Emma walked away, the plan went into motion. She already had a kitchen knife on her. She took Elizabeth's hand and told her she had something special to show her. They just had to walk a little deeper into the woods. 15 minutes in, they stopped. That's where she beat her, strangled her, slit her throat, and stabbed her over and over again. Try to imagine it. A 9-year-old girl, trusting the older girl from down the street, walks deeper and deeper into the forest as the light starts to fade, until she realizes something is terribly, horribly wrong. Alyssa tried to burn the body, then she buried it in the hole. And here's where Rice tightened the noose, because that hole had already been dug days earlier. There was no shovel out there. She didn't kill, dig a grave, burn a body, and make it home in time for church. The grave was waiting. She'd been waiting.
You didn't have a shovel with you.
I had a knife.
You didn't dig that hole with a knife. You did not dig. I was out there for 5 hours. You didn't dig that hole with a knife.
I dug it Friday.
She dug it on Friday. Elizabeth was killed on Wednesday. This wasn't a snap. It was a setup.
What we're going to do right now is kind of get some things lined up to to go out there and have you point out that site where she's at. Will you be able to do that?
Alyssa agreed to take Sergeant Rice to the body. 15 minutes from her own front door, the search for Elizabeth Olten came to a heartbreaking end. The very next day, she was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The town was in shock.
Officials confirmed today they are seeking a petition of first-degree murder against a 15-year-old suspect for the killing of 9-year-old Elizabeth Olten.
The case now centers on letting the court decide if the suspect should stand trial as an adult. That starts with a closed detention hearing tomorrow. After the detention hearing, the court will hold a certification hearing November 18th to determine whether or not to try the suspect as an adult. Among factors the court will consider are whether a history of violence is present, as well as the suspect's age, maturity, and sophistication.
Police also brought in Alyssa's boyfriend and put him on a polygraph. They suspected he might have known something was coming.
We know a lot more stuff than we're leading on to believe. We've talked to several people. So what do you know? Why is the polygraph telling me different? Why is your body telling me different? Yourself, do you know what it feels like to kill somebody? What would you say? No.
In the end, they cleared him. He was never charged. The only person responsible for what happened in those woods was Alyssa Bustamante. So why did she do it? The diary said it all. She just wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. And here's what's truly chilling. Investigators found 2 graves on her property. The second one was never used. To this day, nobody knows for sure who it was meant for. But police strongly suspected the next victims would have been her 2 younger brothers. On October 28th, just 1 week after she vanished, Elizabeth Olten was laid to rest. Her favorite color was pink, so her funeral was draped in it. A horse-drawn carriage carried her pink and white casket through a town that had completely fallen apart. Every seat was taken. People stood in the aisles. The investigators who searched for her sat in the front rows.
A girl from Jefferson City area will be tried as an adult with first-degree murder charges. Alyssa Bustamante.
A judge ruled Alyssa would be tried as an adult. She pleaded not guilty, and the case moved toward trial. But then, a gut punch for the prosecution. In June 2011, her defense team got a judge to throw out major portions of her confession to Sergeant Rice, arguing that the way the juvenile officer questioned her made it inadmissible. Just like that, the most damning evidence in the case was weakened. So prosecutors made a calculated move. They offered her a deal: plead guilty to second-degree murder instead of first, and the death penalty goes off the table. Alyssa took it. The courtroom was silent as she stood up and walked through every detail of what she'd done. Reporters said you could hear people breathing. Her defense leaned hard on her broken childhood, her mental health diagnoses, and her antidepressants, arguing the medication had pushed her toward violence. The judge wasn't swayed. Alyssa Bustamante was sentenced to life in prison for second-degree murder, plus 30 years for armed criminal action, to be served back-to-back. But there's a catch. Months later, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that juveniles couldn't be sentenced to automatic life without parole. Under Missouri law, that means Alyssa can apply for parole after 30 years. At sentencing, Patty Price stood up to speak. She was shaking so badly, the judge eventually asked her to stop. All Alyssa could muster in response was, "I cannot even understand what you guys are going through," and that she'd give her own life to bring Elizabeth back. And then came one of the most quietly devastating moments of the entire case. Karen and Gary, the grandparents who had raised her, fought for her, loved her through everything, stood up and walked out of the courtroom. Detectives in the room said they watched Alyssa's face change as it hit her. The only 2 people in the world who had ever truly been there for her had just given up. Patty didn't buy a word of her remorse. She said everything Alyssa said was a script written by her lawyers. The prosecutor, Mark Richardson, said in all his years he'd never tried a case like it, and he hoped he never would again. The motive has to be the most senseless, reprehensible that could be in humankind: to take a life for a thrill. A forensic psychologist put it bluntly. With her history, it was only a matter of time before she killed someone. Patty later sued not just Alyssa, but the hospital that treated her, arguing they should have seen the warning signs and stopped this before it ever happened. The hospital lawsuit was thrown out. The civil suit against Alyssa was won. $5 million Patty will likely never see. Alyssa appealed her sentence in 2014, denied. A few hours, a few choices, one teenage girl with a kitchen knife and a hole already dug in the woods, and an entire town was never the same. A little girl who loved Hannah Montana Montana and was about to star in her school play, who was scared of the dark, who just wanted one more hour to play with her friend, is gone. And the only person who can truly understand why is sitting in a prison cell, having gotten exactly what she wrote about wanting.